You're tuned to KSJE, Farmington, New Mexico, 90.9 FM. And now 103.3 FM, K277CR, Durango, Colorado.
We have a 911. Armed robbery in progress. See surplus store corner People's Drive, North 24th Street.
Welcome to the Cop Shop. Another exciting week. This time we've got two new guests. They're really just visitors.
I'm not a guest. I'm your co-host.
One of them is distinguished, and that's Casey, Lieutenant Casey Malone. And the other is, well, times are desperate, folks. And
Wow.
and Nicole's busy, and so we have invited Georgette back. That was an invitation that really wasn't offered, but was somehow mandated.
I pushed my way in, actually.
Yes. So anyway, welcome, Georgette. We're very pleased to have you here.
Thanks, Steve. I feel like I can call you by your first name now. 'Cause
Yes.
You're not my boss anymore.
No, that is true.
Nice to see you again,
Which is why you're
Steve.
never on the show anymore. So I do appreciate that part of it.
Whatever, you missed me.
So Casey, tell us about yourself. You were born in a shack.
Yes, I was, under a bridge.
Yep.
Yeah, local bridge.
Very good.
But I wanted to start out by saying I thought Georgette had been trespassed from here. But now that I know that she hasn't, I assume that's still going to occur probably today.
Well, the fact that she doesn't know she's trespassed doesn't mean that security isn't listening presently and making their way to the studios of the mighty KSJE.
You can't arrest me for something I don't know that I'm doing. I
No,
wasn't aware.
that actually is the
Wasn't
point
aware.
of this arrest for you. So today we're here to talk about the Real-Time Crime Center, which is something that the Durango Herald, the KOB has done some stories on a little bit. I think Durango Herald was first, but Daily Times has got a story that'll be coming out. We're not sure when. But it's something that we've actually talked about some in our budget sessions over the last year, and that Casey has played a prominent role over the last few years in helping us develop. So the Real-Time Crime Centers, it is functioning right now, and we're continuing to build it out. And so we thought we'd invite Casey on to talk. Casey's a talker, so I'm not going to say much today. I'm just going to kind of sit back and watch Casey.
Probably be a lot of silence.
Could be. Don't check your radios, folks. The volume is turned up. So Casey, why don't you walk us back through? You were head of the district coordinator unit, and that's when we really started going on cameras, specifically on the Riverwalk was kind of our goal. And why don't you walk us through some of the things that you did early on?
So I want to say it was 2018. Do you remember? Was it 2018 or early 2019?
Yeah.
I
think it was 2018.
There was a big push for promoting outdoor recreation in the city of Farmington, and we knew at the time that there was a kind of a negative perception of safety along our trail system, the Riverwalk specifically. And so as an agency, we started working towards addressing that. And one of those approaches was deploying cameras in the park system. So that kind of started the ball rolling to what became known now as the Real-Time Crime Center. We deployed 12 cameras along the Riverwalk, 6 different locations, but each location has 2 cameras.
Very good. And that was, we actually got some of these ideas for the Real-Time Crime Center beyond just cameras, which we could have just put up, and in some places there were cameras up. We actually got, into the Real-Time Crime Center, which is more active listening and active watching on the cameras, after we went down and visited Albuquerque, and you were part of that.
So I've been down to Albuquerque a couple of times, probably in the last, 7-8 years, and toured their Real-Time Crime Center. Also went to Hobbs. They have a real active Real-Time Crime Center. And then our sergeant in the unit has also been to, I believe, Ogden, Utah, and toured theirs.
And so when we were down in, obviously we don't have the resources that Albuquerque does, but they had a bunch of folks, and it was actually fairly impressive the first time we saw it.
Oh, absolutely.
What the capabilities are. So as we've started with the actually having bodies, and what does the Real-Time Crime Center actually look like beyond just the cameras?
So the actual site within the Farmington Police Department is, it would be like the ideal gamer or movie room, I guess would be the way to describe it. There's a bunch of computer screens, there's TV screens, and we just have a staff that monitors those cameras throughout the day.
So we actually have a comment that came in from Nina. I did not know there were cameras. That makes me feel safer. Thanks for doing that. So that is, we definitely were trying to improve the image of the Riverwalk, which is just a real jewel for us here. And Georgette, in your new position with the city, you hear some of the concerns of citizens when they see too many inebriates in an area, or they feel like they're not safe. But the reality is we have not had a whole lot of incidents on the Riverwalk. This is more just to help us in those few instances where we have had problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we see those concerns as well coming in through our social media or calls to administration. And again, the Riverwalk is a safe area, safe amenity for our community. But yeah, this helps for those few incidents that happen. It's a good tool for you guys. So
we along with this. Trying to change that perception when we deployed the park rangers down there, the guys in the bright yellow shirts, they can only be where they can be, and the cameras, enabled us to be able to see a lot more area and to just ensure that, there's not anything nefarious going on down there.
And so that was the first stage, and you've heard defund the police or get the police out of some stuff. Well, we've actually been doing things to try and get police officers out of certain areas and move in other people. And the park rangers is an excellent example of it, and you were over that when we created it, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And they're unarmed, but they have tasers for self-protection. But they're kind of the eyes and ears of the police department on the Riverwalk and fairly visible, and not just on the Riverwalk, but in some of the other parks as well. And that's been a pretty successful program, but it has its limitations, like you said.
Absolutely. Because, at any given time, we probably, at most have 4 of those guys working, and they can only be, where they are. So they're deployed downtown, and they're deployed, at Farmington Lake and some of the other parks throughout the city that we need to have a presence at. And we can't always just, have a patrol officer sitting in those locations. So.
And so, Georgette, again, from your position, we are expanding the Riverwalk system right now, so that's a challenge from the police department perspective. It's a great opportunity for the city. And then the Farmington Lake recreational area, A, it's expanded, and B,
Yes.
it really mushroomed beyond what I think we initially were thinking was going to happen when we opened it.
Yeah, absolutely, and pretty quick, and there's more, plans in the works for that area. So I know we've gotten, incredible feedback even on your park rangers being out as that presence. So I think, the cameras is just, again, that added benefit for people's safety, or in the event something does happen, that you're able to gather that information, and get suspect information or whatever. So as quickly as our outdoor recreation amenities are expanding, it's probably difficult to keep up with, and so the cameras are a win for the community.
So that's one of our challenges. We're not going to get a lot more bodies, certainly not in these economic times. So you've got to look for other creative ways of still being able to project out, and if something is going on, we can tap into it live, and that's what you've got 2 officers, and we're getting a civilian attached to that unit in addition to a sergeant.
Yes, sir, that's correct. We also, our data analyst is attached to that division. She doesn't actively monitor cameras, but she is a resource for them to monitor specific areas as a result of, we've had an increase of cars getting damaged in this area, or whatever the situation is.
Mm-hmm. So the program started with kind of an experimental. We were putting 6 cameras, which meant we had to be kind of strategic about catching the ingress and egress out of the Riverwalk area. But we've subsequently, and that was working with Captain Derrick Chauvin, who couldn't be here today, but he obtained a grant last year, and we were able to get a lot more cameras. And now this year, we've just received a state grant, I guess it is, that's going to be close to $850,000 more for cameras and infrastructure. And so talk a little bit as we got out of the Riverwalk area. What was some of the challenges like with fiber, and what have you had to do to kind of figure out where to go?
So as you mentioned, this project is significantly bigger than just installing cameras at locations. For example, along the Riverwalk, those cameras, we knew that we weren't going to be able to tear up the trail system in order to get fiber installed in there. The other possibility is cameras that operate off of radio frequency. Those are unreliable in heavily wooded areas, which is exactly what that trail system is. And so fiber is the ideal way. And so as we expanded outside of the Riverwalk, we kind of targeted areas that a lot of them that we already had access to fiber, and also areas that we knew there was a large, population of people, busy intersections is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. And so that's kind of how we targeted it. We went along initially along the Main Street, primarily East Main corridor, but it does expand all the way out west.
And so we already had, as a city, we already had cameras in many of those locations, but they were, they weren't good enough for what we were talking about, is to actually identify people, and then they didn't record at all. But they were used by the traffic engineering folks to monitor the intersections,
A
right?
maintenance type, yeah.
Yeah, they and in fact they would change them to different intersections throughout the year just based on need. And so as that was explained to me, those cameras were kind of designed to, if they get a complaint of a traffic light not functioning in this area, that instead of having to send bodies, in the middle of the night, they're able to monitor the camera to see if the light is functioning.
So we've kind of worked in conjunction with them as we've put up these new cameras. Right now we've done a pretty good job on the eastern part of Main Street, and we started to see some benefit to these. And so why don't you talk about a couple of the things that we're now able to do that previously we wouldn't have been.
So one of my favorite examples that I like to talk about is these cameras aren't necessarily designed to catch criminals. So one example, out on East Main Street, if we have a traffic crash, at the intersection of 30th and Main, and someone calls dispatch and they say, it looks like somebody's hurt, it's a bad crash. Well, that information is relayed to responding police officers, responding firefighters, and a responding ambulance. And because there's an injury component to it, that's a light and siren response. That's people driving, faster than the posted speed limit, and greatly adding risk to everyone. And so, in that specific example, our real-time crime center would be able to go live in that intersection and be able to monitor it and potentially update those officers, all of those first responders, that it appears that the occupants are out and are okay, and as a result, that now lights get shut off and guys' speeds come down, and it's safer for the entire community. So that's just one example that I like to reference that's commonly done. Another example, in that same area, kind of right at the very beginning of deploying this, we had a DWI crash in the middle of the day. The driver of the vehicle fled on foot and entered the culverts underneath East Main Street, and officers responded, and they set up a perimeter, and they started searching those culverts, and over time they weren't able to search them all the way, and so they eventually had to go back in service. Well, our real-time crime center was able to just point the cameras at the entry and exit points of those culverts and monitor it. Well, about 45 minutes later, this guy comes out of the culvert, and he was able to update the officers, and they responded back and caught the guy. So that's just an example of one person with a camera that frees up significant other number of police officers.
No, and that is a good story, and we've had a few of the other incidents, like just the routine crash where two drivers think they both had the green light, and people don't do that deliberately, but they sincerely think they had the green light, and so those are tough then for the police to. How do you investigate that? Who's going to be assigned responsibility to that, unless you've got a bunch of witnesses? Well, in this case, now we can just call back and we. And we pull up the video and we can see who had a green light and who had a red light at the time of the crash.
Yes.
So, Georgette, one of the concerns I think that people have, certainly we were cognizant of it as we developed it, is that now it's kind of Big Brother watching.
Exactly.
And
I was just thinking
everywhere.
I was just thinking, I was going to ask you, have you seen some of those concerns coming in? Any comments or anything you guys are aware of that? So how do you balance that then?
So we did see some comments in the Durango Herald article, where afterwards, then in the chats, people were worried about it. But Casey, we have limits to what we're doing with this data, we don't store the stuff that it is recording, but we don't store it for months or years. And so, talk a little bit about the policies you've developed.
Yeah, so that's not our function. That's not our idea for this whole unit to monitor people or to be Big Brother or anything. In fact, we train our operators that they're not manipulating cameras, they're not moving cameras unless there's a nexus or a reason why. So officers get dispatched to, let's just say, Walmart on East Main Street in reference to, an armed subject in the parking lot. Well, because that dispatch comes out, now our officers will manipulate cameras and begin to look for that person in that area. So there needs to be a reason. So they're not zooming cameras and looking at things and stuff like that unless there's a dispatched reason. All of our cameras that are owned by the city are in public places. They're in places where where people shouldn't have a huge expectation of privacy anyway. And so those are just a couple of examples, I guess.
So the data we store, essentially, we don't have servers that we're backing this all up onto it, but the camera itself records, and then it records over itself.
Yeah.
And that time period varies, I guess, depending on how much activity is in a certain area, because some of our cameras are motion activated, so it's not recording then if it's not active. But generally we're in the 7 day area.
Yeah, 7 days. 7 days is the maximum amount of time, as I understand it, that information will be stored, and that's for a couple of reasons. But storage is hugely expensive.
It is,
and also there's just there's really no reason for us to keep it longer than that.
So
And it does
essentially,
go to that.
if something happened, then you guys would need to be able to get that piece if it was something that you did need to use for evidence, and then download it or however you guys
Absolutely.
do that, and then keep that specific piece for whatever it was, that situation.
Yes, that's correct. So if something occurs and for the case it's being utilized as evidence, then that is captured, stored, and entered into evidence like any other piece of evidence would.
Okay.
Just similarly to like our body cameras or what have you.
and that's one of the concerns as far as people that with civil liberties, that the police are capturing a ton of data and then storing it and using it to then track citizens in the future, and that isn't what we're doing here. We're able to store it for a few days in order to give us a chance, if there's a crime or something significant that's happened, for our detectives to go back and pull all that data. And now Casey's over the detective unit, ironically, so we moved from district coordinator to detective, and cameras are a way that our detectives work hard to solve cases.
Absolutely. There's few things that are better than video of an incident, because it tells the story. And so there's few things that we would rather have than that piece of evidence.
So we're still building it out, and like I said, we just received a bunch more money, which will give us a chance to work really. And fiber is infrastructure for the city, so it isn't just something that our camera system would use, but it's something that others throughout the city can use as well. So this project is going to be a decent chance for Farmington to upgrade its infrastructure.
Absolutely.
And now, is this something, and you might have said this, I'm sorry if I missed it, but is this something that you can partner with private entities as well? Like if a business or somebody has, are you able to partner with them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the biggest components of this, and we are actively seeking out, the whole public-private partnership thing, and probably a prime example is the school system. Farmington Municipal Schools has allowed us access to their cameras in the event of an emergency. And so we have no storage capabilities or any of that situation or any of that, but if the situation occurs on their campus, we do have the ability to view it.
Okay.
And so we have had a couple of those incidents. We had obviously the Aztec school shooting, which would have given first responders a chance to see where the suspect is as they're responding. But we also have had incidents on the college campus as well, which would be a chance for us to give officers more information as they respond.
So now, me as a private citizen, let's say I have a camera system or maybe a doorbell system, and something happens and I want to contribute. I say, I have a system. How do I do that? Do I need to have that set up ahead of time? Can I just call you and say, hey?
So, and I can't remember what it's called, but specifically doorbell systems, primarily Ring's the most common one, so I'll just use them as an example. They have within their network the ability to give access, or you're basically giving permission to ring for law enforcement to be able to access your videos after the fact, not live or anything. But if you have an incident that occurs at your house and you store that video and then provide that permission, we are able to access it after the fact. So, so I don't. We've explored that. We haven't actively dove into that process, but it is definitely on our radar.
Okay.
And more information will be coming on that stuff.
Great. I would think many people would probably want to participate just to help out.
So we're nearing the end. Excellent job. You were very, very engaging and talkative today. So that's one of Casey's strengths at the department.
I think you're making fun of me, sir.
I'm just
He's always
touting
making
you.
fun of
I'm
people.
just touting you. This was also, unfortunately, a big week in policing nationwide, and that was with the guilty verdict in the Derrick Chauvin case in Minneapolis. He was found guilty on all counts. That was definitely something that many people in the country are watching. We had a post out this week talking about some of the things that we do that we don't talk about all the time on police reform. So if you're a Facebook fan, log into Farmington PD Facebook and take a look at some of the things we've done, new policies. It is something that Chauvin incident is now over with, but police reform and police evolution is something that continues to be a focus at FPD. And so I think we're nearing the end. We're going to let you hit to our favorite song, but thank you, Georgette, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Casey, you've got a career as a DJ. I just feel it coming.
I'll